I'd like to welcome you all to the first annual Hot Tip Program. And what we're very fortunate to have our committee members give you hot tips that they have learned over the years, which will be helpful to no matter whether you are a novice, an intermediate, or a very seasoned attorney. The tips were selected to give everyone something to walk away with. So my name is Ronnie Kaplan, and I am chairperson of this committee. And I've been on this committee for probably about 8 years as other members of the committee, like Rick Olympic and Sam Choi, have also been members for several years. We will introduce each member very briefly, since the point of this program is to give you as much information as possible in 5 minutes. We'll have time for questions. I have some questions ahead of time, so please use the chat feature to ask your questions. So I am a specialist in family law. My office is in the Synergy Law Complex Center in Sandy Springs, and it's Kaplan Family Law. So our first speaker is Jason Graham of Graham Legal. In addition to being a practitioner and an appellate lawyer, he is also an entrepreneur and started Synergy. He is going to tell us about mentorship. So without further ado, Jason, take it over.
I guess good morning is now bled into good afternoon. Jason Graham, and this hot tip is really about our law practices and professionalism generally. And it's Ronnie asked me to do, I guess because she's from New York, she asked me to cram what I did about 5 years ago as a 1 hour CLE in 5 minutes. And so I'm going to endeavor to do that. Uh, and do it fast. And I'm going to try to share my screen here. And this is the slideshow that I did on mentorship, how to find a good mentor, how to be a good mentor, and why it matters. And I started by defining mentorship, and that there's not enough of it going on anymore. I think with the advance of technology and we just don't spend time mentoring younger lawyers, and I think it's hurt our profession. I talked about some famous mentors, Luke and Yoda, Rocky and Mickey, and Oprah Winfrey. Talked about Maya Angelou. I spent some time on that mentorship relationship and some of her words of wisdom about how important mentorship is. She famously said, you don't get anywhere without good mentorship. And I tried to get philosophical about the importance of mentorship. And some of these quotes, I like to teach through memes. Fail early, fail often, but always fail forward. From Toy Story, as your mentor, is my job to keep you from suffering a horrible death. Experience enables you to recognize a mistake when you make it again. Good judgment comes from experience, and a lot of it comes from bad judgment. Will Rogers has some great sayings. Of course, my favorite, Yoda: try not, or do not, there is no try. A lot of wisdom there. Talk about how to be a good mentee. Mentorship's not like health insurance or 401k. It's not a benefit that you even earned. You got to focus on the ship. Just like any relationship, it takes a lot of time, energy, and work from both parties. Got to be a sponge, a good listener, be a friend of your mentor. A good mentor is a busy person. This quote from Dale Carnegie is a good one. You can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you. be interesting, be interested. How to find the right mentor? You got to work at it. Don't just count on luck. I quoted the Terminator, Sarah Connor, no fate but what you make. Take baby steps. Don't start with, do you want to marry me? Go on a few dates first. Um, but for the younger folks on the Zoom, really try to find someone to take an interest in you and to share their experience. Why invest in a mentee for those more experienced folks on the Zoom? We really owe it to the profession, because, well, apocalyptic view here. This is what happens when we don't mentor younger people. Um, you know, we have we've all had that experience of being in a calendar call where some young lawyer gets up there and sticks their foot in their mouth and wastes everybody's time, or at a negotiating table. You know, people don't learn how to don't teach us stuff in law school. A little less apocalyptic view. The story of the starfish on the beach. You can make a difference one at a time by being a good mentor. Um, this was teaching the table manners of practicing law. Law schools don't teach that. And so this is why invest in a mentee. Talk about an acorn has many true potentials. A giant oak tree has ammunition in a sling to take down Goliath. Food for herbivores. You can even make acorn coffee for medicinal purposes. Those young lawyers are like acorns. They can have lots of different outcomes, is the point, depending on how they're mentored. How to be a good mentor? Be there, answer questions, pontificate, tell stories, tell reward stories. Listen, but ask questions. Get to know your mentee. Take them on field trips. Take them to court, depositions, closings. Make time. Take them out to coffee. Take them out for a beer. Just spend quality time. Give them the benefit of your experience so they don't have to make the same mistakes we made. Be a good mentor. My favorite, Yoda. Quid pro quo, the mentor-mentee relationship. Both the mentor and the mentee have to give and take. Have multiple mentors and multiple mentees. Pay it forward. I'm right at 5 minutes, but the craving of mentorship is why a lot of folks are going for smaller firms. And the Dean Booth was one of my mentors. May he rest in peace. His favorite saying was, be like a jar of mayonnaise, keep cool, never freeze. And lots of reading on mentorship, which I encourage. And that is my 1 hour presentation in 5.5 minutes.
Well, that was
great for today.
Jason, that was really fantastic. I have a question. There are people in the audience now that would like to get a mentee. How do you go about doing that? If you're at a large firm, do you just pick one favorite or go on a list? How does somebody, once they decide they want to be a mentor, how do they pick the right mentee?
Well, I mean, my mentor used to say, you'll used to quote from Moulin Rouge when you're never going to meet anybody if you stay in your room all day. You have to get out of the office and meet people. In this case, meet other lawyers. And what I would, before I know how to work a room, I would be the awkward guy standing alone and see everybody talking to each other because they already knew everybody. I'd find the other awkward person in the room who didn't know anybody either, and find that person and go up and start a conversation. And I think if you do that enough, you'll find somebody with something in common. And that's a good way to find the person who might need some help.
Well, that's terrific. I think that's a great tip for everybody. So our next speaker is Tracy Weiss, and Tracy's been in practice for more than 20 years. And she also does family law, and we actually met each other being opposing counsel in a case many, many years ago. And Tracy's going to talk to us about how she started her own practice and started using a virtual assistant. So take it away, Tracy.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and try and share my screen here. Hopefully everybody can see that. Hold on 1 second. Okay. So thank you, everybody. I hope everybody's having a good start to the afternoon. So I'm going to talk about using a virtual assistant or a VA to either start or grow your law firm. And that's something that I never thought I was going to do until I found myself trying to find help to start my own firm and started really looking at the costs and was very nervous about what I was committing myself to until I got going. I've been practicing for 24 years, but I just started my own office in 2022 after having been a partner at a larger firm for several years. And it's very different when you're on your own. So first, when you realize you need help, you've got to go through several questions. How much help do you need? What can you afford to pay? Exactly what type of help are you looking for? What do you need them to do for you? Do you need somebody that's just going to help with intake of new cases? Do you need a legal assistant? Do you need somebody that's more skilled that can do the paralegal work as well? Do you need a new associate attorney? And once you figure out what you need, then you have to figure out how much do you need them? Are you looking for somebody part-time or full-time? Do you need are you able to offer benefits to somebody? I originally thought I would probably try and hire a part-time paralegal, but found myself going in an unexpected direction when I heard of some other people who were happy with using VAs. So first I was looking at cost. So my office is in Sandy Springs. So I was looking at what was it going to cost me to hire somebody to work in this part of town, which is not a cheap part of town. So Indeed.com has some information on the rates for legal assistants. So for an in-person legal assistant in Sandy Springs, Georgia, you're looking at a range of about $20 to $26 per hour. So if you've got somebody working part-time, 20 hours a week, you've got to be prepared to pay them around $1,700 to $2,250 a month. If you want that same person full-time, that's going to go up to more like $3,500 to $4,500 per month, plus benefits, plus other incidental expenses. Whereas with a virtual assistant, I use a company called LegalSoft Solutions, and all of their VAs are full-time, 40 hours a week. And their rates start at $12 an hour and then can go up, not a whole lot, but can go up from there depending on special skills and training you want them to have. So I wanted somebody who could do more paralegal type work. And so I pay a little bit extra for that. But for a legal assistant, you're looking at more like $2,080 per month for full time. So it can cost you about the same to have a virtual assistant through that company as it would full time, as it would to have an in-person legal assistant for half of that time. Other cost considerations that you need to think about when you're deciding what type of support you're going to hire. If you're hiring somebody who's based in the US and you're hiring them full time, are you prepared to provide opportunities for them for medical, dental, vision, life insurance, short-term and long-term disability, retirement plans, paid time off? If they're in person, are you going to be prepared to give them a desk, a computer, a printer, access to the internet through your office? Who's going to train them? Who's going to help with onboarding your new employee? And then another big question is, does it really matter to what your work provides where that assistant is located? Do you need somebody who's located nearby and can come into the office? Or are you able to do a lot of things remotely? After the pandemic, I found myself doing so many things through the cloud anyway, a lot of clients preferring to meet virtually. So it doesn't really matter for my purposes right now, most of the time, to have somebody in person. I have somebody else who comes in part-time in person when I need them. If you want somebody in person, then the big question is, where are you going to put them? Do you already have enough room for additional staff, or do you need to take on additional space? If you need additional space, is there any available adjacent to where you are, or do you have to move into another location? Those are all potentially big expenses. In Sandy Springs, the average rent for offices runs about $27.32 per square foot per month, and you're looking at probably between 75 and 150 square feet for each person you add. So that can also be another big expense. And I'll tell you, that one right there is what really made me start looking more seriously at a virtual assistant. After that, you have to figure out what hours do you need that person to be working for you. Do they need to be there 9 to 5 Eastern time? Some VAs are based outside of the US, some are based inside the US, but not necessarily in the same time zone. So one thing for me, so LegalSoft Solution staffs through the Philippines. And the Philippines, there's a 12-hour time difference from where we are, give or take daylight savings time. But so when we're working during the day, my VA, Christelle Salas, who is watching this right now, hi Christelle, she is pulling a night shift. And that's a question that I needed to really think about and talk with her about, of how we were going to make that work on a long-term basis. But if you can be a little flexible, that can be a huge cost-saving opportunity. And then if you decide that you want to hire a VA, you're going to have a consultation with somebody from the virtual staffing company. You're going to talk with them about what your needs are, exactly what you're looking for in terms of applicants, what skills you need them to have, and what role you want them to play. And you want to also ask them about things like who's going to be responsible for providing a computer and internet access. One thing I liked about LegalSoft, they also provide a VPN. So while she's in the Philippines accessing my network, we've got an extra level of security for that connection. Once you're done talking with them about your needs, they assemble all the resumes and send them to you, give you time to review them, and then they coordinate the interviews. And LegalSoft, I like, they actually helped facilitate those interviews. They had somebody that was on the Zoom meetings with me, with each of the applicants, and then afterwards spoke with me about questions that I had, concerns, any additional information I was looking for. And once I made my selection, they go back and notify the applicants who I've selected, who I haven't. Those that I haven't go back into the applicant pool and continue interviewing with other companies. And the one that you've selected, if you let them know what types of platforms you're using for different programs in your firm, they'll help with training them how to use those platforms ahead of time and help with onboarding them. So when you want their start date to be, everybody's up and running pretty quickly. Now, we've all been, well, if you've worked in a firm for any length of time and had any role in hiring, you have encountered the situation where you look really hard, you find somebody that you think is great, and then for one reason or another, it doesn't work out. Either they're just not the right fit for you, or they take a different job and you are back starting all over again, having to figure out where you're even going to find applicants. With the VA option, you go back to the virtual staffing company and they just pull together another set of resumes for you. And this is something, thankfully, I haven't needed, but I know that this can happen within just a couple of days, that you're back into doing, you know, some back-to-back online interviews, and they go through the same thing again. They already know what technology you need. They get them up to speed and you start with your new person. If your needs change and you decide that you no longer need the VA, then you just want to make sure when you are signing up with a company that you pay attention to how do you end that relationship. So like with LegalSoft, I just need to give them 30 days notice and they handle the rest. So you also have that opportunity if you're working with somebody and it doesn't work out, you don't have to go through the logistics of potentially firing somebody here. You know, that person goes back into the applicant pool and starts interviewing with a different potential company, and you move on. So I know my time is short and I am probably over time already, but here are some examples of some companies that you can do some virtual staffing through. LegalSoft is the one, like I said, that I use. Remote Coworker has specifically legal trained VAs available. There's another company called TaskBullet. I'm not aware of anything specifically legally trained through that company, and there are a lot of other companies like that. But they each have some different, they each have some different pay structures. So if you need somebody more on a long-term basis, you can do a monthly payment situation like LegalSoft. If you are just looking for somebody for a short amount of time for a certain number of hours here and there, TaskBullet might be a more fitting option. And then depending on your needs, different companies have options to pay a little extra to have somebody who's bilingual, or if you want to pay for somebody who's based in the US, you're going to pay a little bit more for that. So I know I'm out of time. And one thing just before I end, one thing I do want to say is a question that came up for me early on was I wanted to make sure that we weren't taking advantage of anybody in another country, because the cost difference is so major, that when I started with Christelle, one of the things I asked her right out of the gate was, is she being compensated fairly based on Philippine standards? And I was relieved to know that, according to her, if she was working full-time in an in-person position doing the same type of work in the Philippines, she may have even been compensated less than what she's getting through this company. So that was a win-win for all of us. And hopefully this might help you to grow your business too. Thanks.
So Tracy, there's one follow-up question. So what is the fee structure for the company that you work with? I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, so I wanted somebody that had a little bit more legal training. So everybody that I interviewed was a law student. And although Christelle has graduated now, congratulations. But so I paid a little bit more for that. And then that just locks in what my monthly rate is. And they have my company credit card number and authorization to charge it every month. And that's that. If I need something extra, or if I want to send her a bonus, then I reach out to them and add that into what they charge me for that month, and then they transfer it to her, and she gets 100% of any additional payments that I make voluntarily.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. This area is so important that we actually have Bernie Lane, who has also been on the Law Practice Management Committee for the last 2 years. And Bernie is an immigration lawyer, and she also handles personal injury. And she's had her experience with a virtual assistant. So Bernie, could you please tell us about that?
Yes, thanks. I'm very happy to be following Tracy because she was very helpful to me when I was trying to make my decision on hiring a virtual assistant. And I actually used the same company that she had, LegalSoft. I've kind of called my my comedy of errors in hiring a VA. Although at the time I didn't think it was funny. So the first part's going to be kind of a narrative of what I was thinking about when I hired the VA, what I wanted to accomplish, what I did and what I didn't do. And the second part's kind of some bullet points summarizing the things that I did wrong and what I would suggest you don't do in the future. I have a small firm, and I was looking for someone to help in the immigration part of my practice. At that time, it was me, my senior paralegal, and a bilingual legal assistant. I previously had a part-time bilingual legal assistant, and when she left, I felt that I might be able to get someone full-time on a virtual basis, full-time for what I was paying her part-time. And that part turned out to be true, and that was a good move. What I wanted to do was to free up my existing staff, mainly from the phone and from doing routine immigration forms. So the first part, the phone, turned out to be a little bit of a comedy of errors. We made the mistake of hiring a virtual assistant at the same time that we decided to change the phone system. Rule number 2, take small steps. Don't try to implement too many changes at one time. The reason that we were enticed by this new phone system was the fact that since she wasn't bilingual, they told us that we could have messages recorded that would then be sent to our Spanish-speaking person, and that would pretty much alleviate the potential problem of only having one bilingual person. Not true. The second mistake that I made was hiring this person in November. Timing is really everything. As many of you know, once you get into November, our minds are looking at holidays and lots of things that take us away from focusing on the practice. When I hired the VA, I knew that my senior paralegal was going to be taking some time off over Thanksgiving to go out of the country for a big family reunion. I thought that I would have my VA up to speed by Thanksgiving, which was about 3 weeks. Again, don't underestimate the time it takes to integrate someone into your practice. So my paralegal left. We hadn't resolved all the phone issues. I had created more work for the people who were there trying to integrate this person into the practice, as well as trying to deal with the mistakes and the messages and whatever. So chaos. My paralegal came back from vacation in early December, and I went on vacation late December. Again, timing is everything, and don't try to do too many things at one time. By the time that we all came back and started the new year in January, it became clear to me that I had not clearly articulated my needs, and that I really did need a bilingual virtual assistant. But instead of addressing it immediately, I said, oh, well, we've got this young lady and she's really nice and we like her. How can we try to make it work and not terminate her? Which brings me to the next point. Once you feel that you've made a mistake, own up to it. It cost me a lot of unnecessary money paying someone that really wasn't a fit before I actually bit the bullet and went back to LegalSoft and asked them to get me some bilingual candidates again. They had given me bilingual choices at the beginning, so I felt it was totally my mistake for not recognizing how much extra work I was creating for the people in my office. But again, once you've made a mistake, own up to it. So let me just summarize my bullet points of where I see I went wrong, and so that you won't make the same mistake. Number one, the biggest mistake that I feel that I made was not having a clear vision of what my needs were and how the virtual assistant would work with my existing staff and how she'd be onboarded and how the transition would be made. When you have a very small team and everybody is pretty much working to their capacity, bringing in a new person and new personalities and new needs takes much more time than you might imagine. Certainly much more than I imagined. So my mistake again was not having a clear vision and assuming that bringing another person in would solve the problems, where in fact it created problems until we figured out how to move forward and solve them. As I said before, another problem was making too many changes at the same time, the phone and the VA at the same time. Big mistake. One of the things that, let me back up. Let me say that we did replace the VA. I have had this new bilingual person for about 3 weeks now. It seems to be working real well. Cross your fingers for me. But we've learned to communicate better, to communicate our needs, both among the people, my existing staff and the new VA. We're starting him with small steps, the phone, that's been our total focus for almost 2 weeks after he went through the 1 week training with LegalSoft. Fortunately, he had worked a short time with an immigration firm in Texas, so he knew some of the lingo, which was a big help. So we spent the first week, and actually we're still working through the phones and how they're going to be handled and how they're going to be, how we're going to deal with the bilingual part. Communications is really important, and training is very important as well. As Tracy said, there is some advantage by having LegalSoft do the first week of onboarding. But the more information that you can provide to them on what training you want, the better. And again, I think the first time around, that was one of my mistakes as well. They do a lot of general training, and we gave them the things that the programs that we use the most, but and I also sent videos on certain things that were specific to immigration. But the majority of the training we are doing now in-house, and I'm pleased with our results. And I think the last one I think I touched on already, and that's not admitting that I needed to reevaluate my decision, taking too long to do that. And feeling guilty that I caused the problem for the first VA more than, and it wasn't really her fault that I was going to have to let her go. And it did cost me money, and it cost me time. And I think it also impacted some of my existing staff morale. So I would say if you made a mistake and you're using a company, it does make it easier to change, because I did not have to talk to the first VA and tell her what the problem was. They took care of it, and they brought new candidates, and I think we're going to have a very good experience. I would highly recommend it. I think part of my reason for making the first mistake is that I had a positive bias from working with people from the Philippines in the past, and that kind of blinded me a little bit to the issues created by her not being bilingual. So that's my story in a nutshell. I provided a brief bullet point. I don't know if it made it in time to get into the presentation documents, but if you have any questions, please shoot them my way, or you can contact me through the practice management committee.
Thank you very much, Bernie. I think it takes a very special person, which you are, to share mistakes. We, as lawyers, we really don't like owning up to a mistake that we might have made, but I know that you helped a whole lot of people, and I really appreciate that. So you're welcome.
I agree with Jason that sometimes we learn more from our mistakes.
All righty. Okay, well, let's go right into Jason Wiggums, Jason number 2, as we call him on the LPM site here. So Jason is a founding partner of his law firm, Wiggum Law, and he specializes in tax. And he is an amazing techie, and he could explain the most complicated tech issue to a non-tech person. And he's going to talk to us about elevating and delegating. So Jason.
Sure. Good afternoon. Let's see. I have 5 minutes, so this is going to be very quick. It could be a much longer presentation, but I'm going to do the best I can. All right. You guys see the slides? Yeah, you do. Perfect. All right. So real quick, who am I? I started a law firm. I graduated law school in 2010. I started my own law firm in 2016. It was myself and an assistant. And since then, I have grown my firm to about 20 people. We do a little bit more than 10 times the volume that we did when I started the firm, just to put that in perspective for you. In order to do that, I had to make a lot of mistakes, as we just talked about, and, improve, change my mindset. And one of the things I had to change was being able to give up a vine, let go of the vine, and delegate. You're not going to get ahead without a team and without, things that you don't love doing. So I learned about this tool called the Elevate and Delegate tool. It is not my tool. It's actually an EOS tool. EOS is the Entrepreneur's Operating System. It's like a system in a box to run your business. And I learned about it through that. And this is an exercise that I do frequently. And so I'm going to walk you through it. And I hope it benefits you. I'll give it to you at the end. Yeah, so here we go. All right, so, why delegate? I'm going to take you back to 2017 and tell you my story, and hopefully that will explain things. So I doubled my book of business from 2016 to 2017. I hired a few more people beyond the legal assistant I started the firm with, and I had greatly increased the amount of money I was making. Like, if you had asked law school Jason if you could get to this number that I was making, I would have told you that that would have been success. And it did not feel that way. And it didn't feel that way because I was this guy in the picture right here. I was wearing all these hats. I had a lot of responsibilities. I was very, very stressed. And a lot of that was of my own making, like, to be honest with you, right? Like, I needed to change and do things differently. And so at the end of the day, I'm sure we've all heard about the 80-20 rule. I've heard it apply to this situation that we maybe only do at best 20% of what we love and what we're great at, and 80% of stuff that we don't love and we're not great at. So the whole purpose of this is to try to maximize what you love and what you're great at. And that's going to be different for all of us, right? I'm not trying to suggest who I am and what I like will be what you like. Those things will be different. But I think the tool to figure it out is the same. So it's a very simple tool. You are trying to determine what you love and are great at. And I have a spreadsheet. I'm going to walk you through it. But the idea is, what are the actual activities that you were doing? And then let's group them into these various categories. And then the idea would be everything that's below the line in the middle of the page. So anything that you don't like and that you're good at, or you don't like and you're not good at, needs to be handed off in any shape or fashion. Is that a virtual assistant? Is that someone you hire in-house? Can you hire a vendor to do the activity? As you'll see in my example, you have a lot of different choices there. But in a perfect world, we would all be living in the box in the top left-hand corner. We would all be doing what we love and what we're great at. We would all be a lot happier. You would probably be making more money too, because you would enjoy working and you'd be more productive. But it's hard. I would tell you today, like, my life is a lot better than it was when I started the firm. On most, I would say on all measures. I take more time off. I'm more involved. I work less. Involved with my family. I work less. I financially do better now. But I am still not living in that top left-hand box. I just want to be clear, right? And your work life changes too. So, here's my sheet. So I created a simple time sheet where you can fill in the activities that you're doing. And this isn't like billing a client, it's more task-based. And then, after you do this, you could sit down later and fill in the other columns. So here's an example of a hypothetical day for me. And I work a lot. When I'm working, I work hard. So I get in at 7. I don't work to 7 p.m. like this says. I work to 6. But so this is pre-delegation. I'm doing bookkeeping, data entry. I'm doing calls with clients. I am preparing a presentation for an upcoming speaking engagement, which as you'll see, it's quite funny. I didn't prepare this. I delegated this presentation to people on my team, and they rated me as a not good at that. And so, and you'll see on the next slide, you know, when you get to the better place, you know, what's said. But, you know, social media, I hate social media. If you like it, that's great. It's just not my bag. So, you know, which quadrant does it go in? Am I delegating it or not? And then what's my plan? Am I outsourcing it? Am I delegating it? Am I automating it? Is it part of the 20%? And then if I'm going to delegate it, who's it going to, right? You need a plan. So this is pre, and then this is post. I personally love business development and networking. I find that, you know, I'm going to be more successful if I spend more time doing things I love, and I eliminate, you know, $20 an hour work and replace it with $550 an hour work, right? And then on the presentation, if you look, it says review presentation for upcoming speaking engagement, which is all I did. I you know, proofed this yesterday. And yeah, so that was my team making fun of me. But yeah, the idea is, what are you actually doing, and how can you change it to make your life better and, you know, make you more productive, I guess. I only have 5 minutes, so I can't go further into the weeds, but I have a QR code if you would like these slides and the spreadsheet. Take your phone out or just email me. Or we can send it out later too. It's just, I did the QR code because of the spreadsheet, but thank you.
That was absolutely fantastic. And I really like that whole concept, and I need to start implementing it myself. So now our next speaker is Rick Olympic, and Rick is,
Ronnie,
yes.
sorry, Ronnie, I hate to interrupt. This has been so fantastic, but I will absolutely get in trouble with the other side if I do not just make this reminder. This is a fantastic program, but there is no CLE that is available for this. So I just want to make sure people know that, because we are in the middle of March Madness, and some of you may be like me and getting your last little bits of credit in, but I just wanted to make sure that that was very clear, and I promised all the people who might get the angry emails and calls that I would make this announcement here. So please just bear in mind, this is valuable information to run a better practice, but it is not currently eligible for CLE credit. Thank you for letting me interrupt, Ronnie.
All righty. So Rick Olympic, could you tell us a little bit about the area that you practice in, which as long as I've known you, it always sounds very esoteric, and I know that you're going to make it simple enough for most people to understand. So why don't you take it away, Rick?
Thanks, Ronnie. I'm going to keep this to 5 minutes. My background is general litigation, which basically over the last 25 years, I've just focused on dirt litigation. So I litigate matters involving real estate, and I really enjoy it. And I am here today basically to try to cross-pollinate people who don't work in real estate, or who are only tangentially, or whose practice only tangentially involves real estate, because it's an important topic. And the topic is basically something that I'm reprising from a year or two ago, and it's called To Catch a Title Thief. And it's basically the substance of my talk is how to avoid your title or the title of your clients or your friends or family, how to keep it from being stolen, literally stolen through forgery, fraud, and other means that are becoming a lot more popular and a lot more prevalent today, due to the fact that we have e-filing, which has actually made, you know, this sort of fraud a lot easier. So I have a quick spreadsheet or PowerPoint rather that I'm going to try to start. I'm just going to hit share screen, and hopefully this works. Share. Okay, can everybody, Ronnie, can everybody see
Yes.
that? So I started off with this URL. And if you want to take a picture of this, or if you want to just contact my office, we can get it to you. This is the new, relatively new URL sponsored by the Georgia Superior Court Clerks Cooperative Association. And using this site, it's free. You don't have to have a GSCCA membership subscription. But basically, you can go to this website and register your property based upon tax parcel ID numbers and things like that. And what it does is it will alert you if somebody records a deed in the deed records, the TPID is going to have to be, plugged in there as well. And you should get an alert by email or however of the fact that there's activity, there's some action affecting your property. So register your property, tell your clients, tell your friends and your families to register their properties, and to it's important for reasons that I think recent news and recent developments have really highlighted. There's actually a bill bouncing between the Senate and the House right now in the state and General Assembly that is supposed to toughen some of the restrictions on on notary publics or notaries public. It requires them to keep a log. And that's about it. A log of people whose names they've notarized and the identification that they took. But there's no teeth in it. The legislature is really not followed they're just not really excited about cracking down on this, in my opinion, but baby steps. So what sort of triggered my interest in this subject was a story on Channel 2 Action News a couple of years ago about a lady whose title was stolen basically because she was no longer living in her home. She had been in, I think, in the hospital or in a retirement home. And so basically somebody forged a probate case in probate court and declared her dead. She wasn't dead, but they, the thief declared her dead, got letters testamentary, and was able to basically sell her property to a third party who was unaware of the situation. So I only have a minute to go. In addition to registering your property, if you have property that's maybe rental or vacation that's not often inhabited, keep one of those Ring doorbell things on it. See if people are checking out your house. It may not be just to burglarize it. It may also be to possibly see if there's somebody there who might be alerted to some sort of a title theft scheme. Consider enhanced title insurance. There's a more expensive owner's title policy that you can get that will cover things like subsequently forged deeds. You may want to, if you're really paranoid, which I'm trained to be, do a protective title search. Again, take a look at registering your property with the fraud registry. Consider retitling property jointly with a spouse or another family member. Consider a HELOC on your home just to have another. If your home's paid off, then a HELOC might not be a bad thing. A low limits HELOC just to have a couple other people involved in the title. Proactive title affidavit, which would basically, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but if you do happen to have an issue with title theft, definitely alert law enforcement, and consider definitely record what's called an affidavit or fraud affidavit regarding your property to just alert the world to the fact that there's an issue with fraud in your title of your property. So that's today's cross-pollination. Your cross-pollination option. If you don't do dirt law, you should at least know about this. If you do domestic, whatever area you practice in, real estate ultimately will become an issue either personally or professionally. And so this is just a little bit of cross-pollination for the springtime.
Well, thank you very, very much. That was incredibly helpful. Our next speaker is Sam Choi. He's a partner at King and Spalding. Sam?
Thanks, Ronnie. And
Okay.
as many of you know, King & Spalding is not a small law firm, so you may be asking yourself why I'm on this presentation. Actually, when I joined the small law firm committee about 21 years ago, the Georgia Bar thought it would be good to have large firm representation on the committee. And personally, I have also practiced in the past with a smaller law firm, and I realized that there's probably more in common between the way law is practiced in small and large law firms at the end of the day. So in thinking about this, I talked to one of my colleagues who spends a lot of time defending professional organizations, including law firms, against malpractice claims. And I asked him what would be a topic that would be of value, potential value to this group that I could cover in 5 minutes. And he said engagement letters. And I said, engagement letters, it's something that's so routine and so, form driven. Why should I talk about that? And he gave me these thoughts. Now, all of us use engagement letters to document our engagement or legal matters. But he also said that the secondary function of these, and you probably know this as well, is to try to minimize the risks associated with the engagement. And what he meant by that, and he gave me these thoughts, and I'll go down these with you, is one, he said, think about the content of the engagement letter. And I said, well, that's sort of obvious. Like, what do you mean? So he said, number one, you have to clearly identify who the client is. Obviously, if it's only one individual, not a big deal. But if you have a corporate entity and that entity is affiliated with other corporate entities, or you have a corporate entity and you have directors and officers and employees, or you have a family situation, is it one family member or all family members or more than one family member? So you have to clearly identify who your client is. And you may also want to think about including an exclusionary statement, something to the effect of, if you're not identified as a client, we're not representing you in this matter, right? It's obvious, but it's good to get that documented. The second point you should consider including in your engagement letter is the scope of your services. What does that mean? You're hiring me as a lawyer. Well, some matters have several aspects to it in terms of legal terms, and you got to be very clear in terms of what aspect you're representing them on. For example, if you're doing a divorce proceeding in a divorce matter and you outsource your qualified domestic relations order matters, you might want to clearly say, hey, I'm going to do everything other than that, or I will take it up to litigation, but if it goes to litigation, I will not be able to represent you moving forward. That has to be clearly defined in the scope of representation so that there are not expectations on the part of client in terms of what they're engaging you to do, okay? This also comes up in a transactional context. They told me about a case, it's a Georgia, I think the Georgia case. So it was a transaction matter where a lawyer was representing somebody with the sale of business. They got basically a security interest for the payment on the sale proceeds and filed a security interest. What happened was that under law, you had to file a continuation statement, apparently, outside my area, every 5 years. And so that continuation statement wasn't filed, and therefore the seller lost their security interest, and as they would have it, the buyer basically had disposed of a lot of the assets. And so the seller came back and sued the lawyer and said, you're responsible for at least filing continuation, or at least advising me that I had to file the continuation statement. And the court actually found in favor of the seller in this case. So what could have happened in that case? At the front end, the lawyer could have basically said, the scope of my engagement is to do everything through closing, but then any responsibility post-closing, potentially including security interest perfection, continuation, not my responsibility unless you engage me to do that, okay? So that's a clear case where that could have protected this attorney. Your billing and fee arrangement, meaning what's your hourly rate, how frequently are you going to bill, what is the expected payment terms, what are the interest terms, the fact that you have a right to cease representation in the event that fees are not timely paid. Obvious, but a lot of engagement letters apparently don't include those statements. How you'll handle the matter, meaning, is it you personally, or are you going to co-counsel? You're going to have associates, you're going to have paralegals engaged. Not while legally required. It would be good to set expectations in terms of how many people will be billing on the matter, whether the client will be responsible for outside counsel fees. That should all be stated in the engagement letter as well. The other area for potential malpractice claims is when the scope of representation changes. And what that really means is that you're engaged for one matter, but over a period of time, the nature of the matter either contracts or expands. And then some issue comes up and there's litigation. So aside from being very clear on what the scope of the representation is, if there is a significant material reduction or expansion of the representation, you should do an addendum to your engagement letter to say, hey, you know, the scope of the representation now excludes this or now includes this, but otherwise the terms of the original engagement letter will govern. So very good practice. Now, regardless of how well written your engagement letter is, it's not any good if it's not signed or you can't find it, right? So you have to chase your clients for a signed engagement letter before you start doing material work. It's one of those things that sort of lapses. Once you send the letter out, you get engaged or doing the work, just forget about the engagement letter. The other piece is when you get the signed engagement letter, it should be the first thing or one of the first things in the file so you can find it, right? If something comes up. And your malpractice carrier will thank you for this. Also, if you had an initial consultation with a potential client and for whatever reason you're not going to be engaged or you don't want the engagement, you should send a letter saying, this confirms that I am not going to represent you in this matter. And by the way, there may be some statute of limitations or some other things that you may want to think about in terms of potentially finding another attorney. Again, just to limit your potential liability, because the last thing is there's a statute of limitations missed. Client says, hey, I thought Sam Choi was representing me in this matter. And that's when that letter would come in as a protective evidence. Once the matter is done, you should send a matter closing letter to say, hey, the matter you engaged me for is now completed. And I'm just basically not undertaking to do any additional work on this, including advising you about potential law changes that it may impact this matter or additional actions that may be required for perfection of security interest, those types of things. So that's a good thing to have as a matter of course in your file to say, hey, I am no longer representing you, that's no ambiguity. So while engagement letters are routine generally for us, you should give the engagement letter and those ancillary letters and documents your full attention, not just to provide a transparent relationship with your client, increase the likelihood of prompt payments, but also to minimize the risks of malpractice claims. Okay, and he just said that's one of the easiest things you can do to reduce liability risks. Okay, so that's all I had, Ronnie.
Okay, well, that was extremely helpful, and I know that I was very surprised when I became licensed in Georgia to find out that retainer agreements were not required professionally by the bar. And it's very basic that you absolutely need to have one, and also to be very careful to make sure that those retainer agreements are signed. Sometimes there's an emergency, like in family law, and it becomes rush, rush, rush. And only later on do you realize that the retainer might not have been signed, and it's hard to go back. So thank you very, very much. Now, the program is officially over. However, we have a fantastic clip that Kevin Rubin, who is a phenomenal family lawyer, but unfortunately is out of the country and was unable to be here, but he pre-recorded a clip on how to do rules in using Microsoft Exchange. And it is a great tip, and I encourage all of you to stay for it. And any of the panelists, it would be very good to have a little bit of feedback about it. But of course, the program is officially over. But Kim, please run the tape. Now, if anyone has any questions, please send them to me at Ronnie at Kaplan Family Law. And also, I would encourage any of you who are interested in being part of the committee that we are taking nominations, self-nominations for interested members. The committee puts on at least 2 programs a year, and we help out with the major program of the Solo Practice 2-Day Institute. And I hope that everybody has enjoyed this program, and thank you very much to the speakers, and Okay.
Good afternoon. My name's Kevin Rubin with Rubin Family Law in Atlanta, Georgia. Today I'm going to talk to you about hot tips for email and calendar management. First segment is going to be about email inbox management. And really it's about controlling the email monster that we all struggle with. Whether you get tens, hundreds of emails a day, they are just clogging up your inbox. And you need to find a way to automate that process so that you can take control of your email inbox. And the way to do it is to use something called rules. That's in Microsoft Outlook. And I'm really focusing on Outlook here because that's the primary program I use. However, if you're using Google or any other email program, there are certainly ways to automate emails that come in and create rules. There are thousands of YouTube videos on these topics. So I would strongly suggest that if you are using anything other than Outlook and you want to apply this to your email program, go on YouTube, type in rules in your program, and you'll find a video tailored to your specific program. So moving on, in Outlook on the ribbon on the top, you're going to see rules. And what you want to do is click on rules when you have an email that comes in. Say it's a standard email that you're always getting. So you click rules and you have a bunch of options. Always move messages from, maybe it's a person or the name of the subject line, create a rule, manage rules and alerts. So I'm a member of an organization called AML. So what I did was I created a rule. Every time I get an email from office@aml.org, it will move that email out of my inbox directly into a folder that I titled AML. I've created a variety of rules so that and a couple of them are shown here, so that anytime emails come in that are from, the usual suspects, I'll say, whether it's the AML, my IT people, Westlaw, I use a ShareFile for document transfer service, or anything along that line. I've created all these rules so that they will automatically move from my inbox into these folders. I'll still be able to see them, but they won't sit in my inbox waiting for me to move them, one at a time out of there. They'll just land in the folder. I can go look at it there, and then I don't have to move it because it's already in there. So suggested rules, e-filing court notifications is one of the best ones you could possibly do because we all get them. There's 2 services in Georgia. They automatically go in there. Law practice management software. I use Clio. Everything goes in there. If you have a voicemail and you get them via email, that's a great one. File sharing services, legal research, whether you're firm operations, marketing, IT, bar associations, the Georgia State Bar. Other things are personal emails. I know I have one specifically for my wife. This way it goes into a special folder and I'm notified right away. So what did that do? That took the onslaught of my mail and that streamlined it so that I now have all mail. Instead of going to my inbox right away, it goes into the folders and I can see them in my email and I can go in and click on them as I want to. Next thing we're going to talk about is calendar management. And this is a great way for you to get a handle on your calendar and what your day looks like. I'm going to talk about 2 things, a meeting format protocol and color categories. Meeting format protocol, very simple. You want to have in your firm a standard protocol of how you will put events on your calendar, whether it's in Outlook Calendar or if you use a law practice management software. So for example, the event here, I have no idea what this is. It's just a hearing. We need more information. So suggested protocol is something along the line of, and I'm a family law attorney, and this is the Super Bowl, so I thought it was funny. But this way I put as much information in there as possible. I know what's going to happen, where it is, what time, and also if you have a location, you want to put that in there. This way it'll usually sync to your phone and your GPS software, so you don't have to every time you go in your car and you're traveling somewhere, it should automatically pick that up. Again, look on YouTube for that. The other thing is color categories, and you notice here I have one that says court, it's in red. I have created all these categories for various meeting types, or whether I'm going to have a board, bar meeting, business development, new client consults. This way I've taken my calendar and I've gone from this where it's just a monotone color. I don't know what these are, I've redacted them obviously, and I've turned it into something like this. So I know the yellow, bright yellow is consults, red is court, for me orange is mediation. This way I can look at my calendar and I know what my day looks like. And it's real simple to implement, real simple to keep going. And you can just tag pretty much anything. You can tag the calendar events. You can even tag emails. But this is a great way to take control of your calendar and see what your day looks like. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. And thank you for watching this.
All righty. Well, thank you, Kevin. I hope that everybody got a lot out of this. We're fortunate to have some of our panelists here, like Rick and Tracy, Bernie, and the two Jasons. So my question is to anyone that would like to answer here, how do you create a rule for old emails to clear out clutter backwards? Does anybody have a suggestion on that? Rick?
I call my IT guy.
I actually know the answer to this one. You can create the rule and then run the rule on your entire inbox. So it's the
Ah,
same thing that was just explained, and you just run the rule on your inbox.
is there any limit to the number of emails that the rules could handle?
No.
Oh, well, that is really fantastic. I think that will be very helpful for me personally. So Bernie, do you have you ever used those rules?
No, but I am certainly going to watch some of the YouTube videos.
All righty. Well, if there's any other comments here, I'd love to hear it. Tracy, how do you use them?
I need to watch some videos and use them more because my inbox is the bane of my existence. I do sync my emails. If I make a subfolder for clients, I sync it to my my documents that are stored in Net Documents. So all of my emails for a particular client, I can, anybody that's working on it can go into Net Documents into that file and see those emails. But as far as filtering them before I read them, yeah, I need to learn that. That's new to me.
What?
So I don't do exactly what Kevin outlines. I use Google Mail too. I don't use Outlook, but I filter a lot of emails. You can archive all of your emails. But I have an assistant who manages my email. Like when you, I mean, anyone who did the QR code will get your information. She will then email you either from me or from her. But if any of you email me, it's very likely that it is not me that is emailing back with you, just to let you know. Like I delegate most of my inbox. She sorts it. She uses the Google version of rules to do a lot of that. But there's a box that I go into that is the emails that I must respond to. So that's typically like legal questions, right? But like most people want information from you or want to schedule something with you. And if you looked at the spreadsheet I have, there was a joke about scheduling because I hate it. Like I die inside anytime I get an email chain about like scheduling a lunch. I love going to lunch. Like if someone wanted to go to lunch, great, let's do it. But I just don't want to schedule it with you. No offense. So I have a human that archives the emails, sorts them, and she does use automations like Kevin too. But yeah, that's what I do. Thanks.
Well,
Question for Kim Henry. Someone is asked in the chat, how do they get the materials provided by the panelists? I don't know how those are being provided. And someone separately asked how to get my PowerPoint presentation, which I don't know if it was included in the materials or not, but anybody who wants my PowerPoint can email me at jason@graham.legal. I'll put that in the chat. It's also on my website. And then someone asked about, can you have a rule send an email to Dropbox or share file folder? Just got to play with Outlook. I know you can forward it to another email outside if your security settings allow it. Don't know how that works with Dropbox or share file.
For what it's worth, I use Evernote for my personal stuff, and I have a rule where you can forward it to a specific email that Evernote will capture. So I know that much. That works.
Well, this sounds like a great idea for another webinar that we could be dealing with how to deal with massive amounts of email that some people might have on their computer, not naming any names, but
One of my tips we didn't get to was everything's on YouTube. You know, use that YouTube search box and find a video on it.
well, that sounds good. So for anyone that wants the materials, please either email me or email Kim at the Law Practice Management, and we'll be glad to send you the materials. And thank you, Kim, and the Law Practice Management team for putting this on, and all of the committee members for all of your hard work. And thank you very much. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend and look forward to seeing you all at the State Bar meeting, which is the first weekend in June. So, and have a great day. Thank you for coming. The meeting is now over.